As we wrap up 2023, it's been filled with highs and lows. Let's do a bit of a recap on this episode. You're listening to the PHEC podcast, episode 332. The field of public health is so broad, overlapping multiple industries. With epidemiology at the core of public health, there are an unlimited number of ways to target specific populations, health conditions, environmental issues, and causes that matter most to you. My name is Dr. Huntley, and I'm the host here on the Public Health Epidemiology Conversations podcast. I'm an epidemiologist, consultant, and entrepreneur with over 20 years of experience in healthcare and public health. On this podcast, my guests and I engage in conversations that demonstrate the importance of public health and epidemiology across a variety of industries, helping you think outside the box and inspire greater positive impact in communities around the world. Now, let's dive into the topic of this brand new episode. Greetings, everyone, and thank you for joining me on this episode. This is the final episode of the year 2023. And as we begin to wrap up and close out for the year, I wanted to share a few highlights. This year has been quite a journey. You know, it's been filled with some high moments, some low moments, and a lot in between. So I think it's a good idea to just, on this very brief episode, share a few of those highlights and key takeaways as we, again, wrap up the year and prepare for the new year. First and foremost, I want to thank you all for being listeners of the podcast. I appreciate every last one of you for your dedication. Some of you have been with me since the very beginning back in 2017, and I appreciate you. Some of you just recently discovered the podcast. I appreciate you as well. Continue to share this podcast with people that you know, because as we grow, we are constantly revising and we try to keep up with what our audience, our listeners, people like you care about and what you want to hear about. And we bring more of that to you through these podcast episodes. We've got some exciting things coming up in next year, which I won't touch on this episode. I'm going to save that. But I just know that there's a lot coming up. So the more you share this podcast episode, and really you can think of anyone who's interested in the field of public health would likely be interested in these episodes. So that doesn't mean it's limited to career professionals or entrepreneurs or students. It's anyone who's interested in or curious about public health. So please share broadly. We appreciate you. This year, like I mentioned, has been filled with so much on the journey. There was a lot of travel involved for me on this journey this year. And when I started to list out some of the places that I've traveled to, I was a little surprised myself. Some of the travel was for events, and some of the travel, different types of events, I'll say. So I've been to Orlando, Florida, St. Augustine, Florida, San Francisco, California, been to Atlanta, Georgia twice, been to Denver, Colorado, Nashville, Tennessee, Houston, Texas, Albuquerque, New Mexico, and I traveled internationally to England. I visited Manchester and London. This has been quite a year. Some of these travel events were like back to back, and I learned a lot about that, what not to do, because it's too much to go back to back traveling for me. But nonetheless, this travel has been an important part of my journey this year. Some of the events, I hosted a few public health entrepreneurs in the US and the UK. So I hosted a few events where the people who were gathering were public health entrepreneurs, supporting them in their businesses. And as they are just at the beginning of the journey, or most of them are already established in their business, somewhere on this journey of building and growing their businesses. And it's been an honor to be in this position, quite frankly, with people who are on this path, spreading their wings, having impact. So those events have been a big part of the travel for me this year. I also had the honor of serving some of my clients in VIP days. I worked with clients one-on-one, and I've shared previously in little tidbits around the year, but this is certainly a highlight of the year for me. Some of these were serving one-on-one clients in their businesses as the organizations, supporting the organization. Some of these clients were entrepreneurs, and some of these clients were career-focused clients that wanted to just have one-on-one time with me to help them with strategy for their journey. It was truly a highlight, almost a surprising highlight of the year for me, because I offered them, only had a few opportunities to even offer this, and they filled really quickly, and I added a few additional, and they filled. So just a few of them that I did this year, but they were really phenomenal. Each of them were very different, and it's just really a great opportunity. I will hopefully have an opportunity to do a few of those next year, but I'm not really sure. I was invited to lead a workshop for tribal leaders. I recently spoke about that on the podcast. That was a very impactful experience, I guess is a great way to describe it. I learned so much about myself, about the leaders, and just that experience was so rewarding for me. I know I want more of that. Those workshops are very custom, but they also fill a need within leadership of these BIPOC organizations. And I just love being invited. I'm honored. You're really honored to be invited to those spaces, but I loved being able to interact and to serve in that way. I was also invited to speak at the CDC to a group of scholars. Spoke about that as well a few months ago. That was a big honor. And that was one of the reasons I took a trip to Atlanta, one of the trips to Atlanta. I invested in my own professional development by spending time with my coach and peers in a couple of retreats that my coach hosted for us. And that was, I love working with this coach. I've worked with this coach for years. But those retreats and the small groups of my peers that were attending these retreats, those were really game-changing for me. As a lot of you can relate to this, we are often in the position of serving others. And most of the time we're serving others. I think we rarely get to receive on the level that we often give. And I know that when I work with my clients, when I work with, whether they're coaching clients, when I'm working with my consulting organizations, these organizations through consulting services, I give, I pour in, and I put my all into that. And that's who I am. That's how I show up. It is wonderful to pour into myself, to invest in my own professional development and spend time with my coach. And she does an exceptional job of pouring into us. My peers and myself, we sit together in these retreats and sit under this coach's guidance and direction, and we learn so much. And it's just such a rewarding experience to both pour into others in that way, but also have someone pour into me and to receive on that level. So those are some of the different types of events that had me traveling all over the place this year. I also would like to mention, in terms of highlights for this year, we on the podcast here, we had some very, again, regular listeners. You've caught this, and some of you may have just missed it. You've heard the episodes, but didn't really realize that these were special sponsored episodes. You may have kind of skimmed over that part. But we have two organizations that we were honored to serve through the podcast by sharing this platform to highlight their organization and what they do. One of the organizations is the Tribal Epidemiology Centers. We work with them for several years, and we've had, I think, our total count, 30 episodes that we've produced for them. But this year specifically, we produced 6 episodes. And if you happen to be a note taker, I'll give you the episode numbers, but we'll share this in the show notes as well. But episode 289, 293, 297, 302, 306, and 310. Those were all earlier in the year. And those are special sponsored episodes for the Tribal Epidemiology Centers. My guests on those episodes are from the different Tribal Epidemiology Centers, or 12 around the country, and they are representing the different centers. You get to learn about these different texts through those conversations. I really enjoy them. I get a lot of great feedback from people who listen to those episodes and say, oh, it's great that you're highlighting the Tribal Epidemiology Centers and learning about the tribal community and the leadership and what they do. Those are highlights for us every year. Truly, we enjoy being able to bring those episodes, and we hope to continue to do that. But if you happen to miss them, then that's those are the episodes, and we will, of course, link to them in our show notes. Another organization that we were able to bring to you this year, and it's been the second half of the year, is MITRE. On those episodes, I always say MITRE, the company that everyone in public health should know about. I love saying that because it's so true. Those episodes, every single person that I've interviewed from that organization, it brings a wow factor. I think it's really this intersection of public health. There's a lot of innovation and creativity, and they're serving on a big level. So we're talking big impact, multiple levels of impact, and oftentimes in ways that you just wouldn't think about, or just makes you go, So if you've missed any of those, we're going to include them in an upcoming update to our podcast episode guide, but we will link to them in the show notes. I don't have the episode numbers right now to tell you, but we'll make sure we provide those links in our show notes. Some other highlights, and this is sort of the ups and downs, but let's continue on the up stuff, the highlights, the top of the mountain things. Some of you are not aware of this, but I did host a mastermind group this year, Public Health Entrepreneurs Mastermind. It was actually kind of born out of our expo in Florida back in February of 2023. We launched then and continued throughout the year. And every one of the entrepreneurs in that mastermind, I've watched them grow by leaps and bounds in their starts to their businesses. So many have gotten, I can clearly remember the conversations in February and compared to where they are now are just completely different. They've grown, they're having great impact, and they've got so much momentum in their businesses as they're preparing to move into the new year. It's been just incredible to watch from my perspective, and just very rewarding for me to be a part of this group, this very special group. And I had no intention of creating this group when we were in Orlando, but as we got closer, we have to continue working with you. So we were able to make this happen. This is something that, despite all the busyness I have going into next year, we've structured in a way that we can continue to hold space for a small group. So just listen out for more of that to come for that opportunity. But that was definitely a highlight. And it wasn't something that I had planned to have. I guess some of the best plans are not planned, but that was very much a highlight for the year. The clients I mentioned earlier, I worked with our consulting clients serving the BIPOC communities and doing really meaningful work. I think everyone on my team, and we have a small data team now, every one of us, we feel good about what we're able to do. And at the end of the day, at the end of every project, we're excited. We've learned so much, and it's generated some great conversations in between. Some of those conversations we're going to start bringing to the podcast, like I mentioned earlier. But this has been certainly a highlight for us this year. My team, I often mention my team, but we've more than doubled this year from where we started to where we are now with the addition of the data team that I mentioned. So growing, and really excited to move into next year. So growing on the way we support entrepreneurs and growing in the way we serve our BIPOC community and our clients through our consulting work, our epidemiology work. It's been exciting. And I need to mention this because another really big highlight that I just kind of brush on every now and then, but I finished the manuscript for my book. If you've been following for a while, last year I was talking about the new book deal I had with Johns Hopkins University Press as my publisher. And I spent this year with everything going on, consistently writing, and I was able to complete the manuscript and get that submitted to them, and had a chat with my editor in person. Just last month, actually. And I'm just excited to be at this place, and excited and nervous, very nervous. But this is just definitely a highlight for the year, because with everything that happened, he even said to me that completing, by my deadline was a testament to my dedication, because I had a lot of reasons to, not complete that or try to extend the deadline. I had a lot of legitimate reasons. But despite all of that, I still finished. It meant a lot to me to finish on time. So that's a highlight. And I did celebrate that. So I'm very proud of myself for that. And I will definitely be talking about that in the new year, next steps and what's coming and when it's coming and all those good things. But these are a lot of highlights. Some of you are not aware of that, and some of you are aware of these things. Not all of them are discussed on the podcast. So a lot of you may not be aware of these things, but these are major highlights for us in the business. And of course, I've had some personal ups and downs this year. As I shared with you a couple of months back, I lost my mother in September. so not too long ago. And she had spent this year fighting cancer and lost that battle in September. And I shared that with all of you. It was really, really hard to share. And so many of you reached out to me and let me know how much you appreciated me being, transparent and open. This is a tough journey to navigate. I don't care where you are, if you know it's coming, if it's all of a sudden, no matter what your age is, it's just a tough journey to navigate losing a parent. And I did find a wonderful therapist to work with. She specializes in grief and also stress management. So I feel like I'm getting so many bonuses working with her, but she's phenomenal and she's helping me on so many levels as I navigate this journey. So I told her we're in a long-term relationship. So I know that it's not something that just kind of, you have a few sessions and you're good. I don't know, maybe some people are, but I think that there's just a lot of layers to unpack. I'm learning a lot about myself in this process. So I'm really happy to be able to take care of myself on this level. It's, one good testament is the fact that I can even talk about it as much as I am telling you about it without breaking down, and even if I did, it would be okay too. So I give myself a whole lot of grace as I navigate this. So, and then of course, personal up or highlight for me this year was my new granddaughter. My granddaughter is about 4 months old now, I think. To go back August, September, October, November. Yep, 4 months old at the time of this recording. And she's such a delight. She's got the most beautiful eyes. They're like button eyes and they're always bright. And she's always very attentive. We'll see if that continues as she gets older. But right now she's very attentive. She watches you and she'll just, she's very present with you. So be very interesting to see how this changes as she continues to get older. But I'm really excited to have her along with my grandson, Jason, who is growing up and very much in his 2-year-old phase. That's about all I'll say on that note. If you've had a 2-year-old or you remember raising a 2-year-old or going through that phase, you can relate. I think he's absolutely adorable because as a grandma, they can do no wrong. Well, I enjoy sharing these little tidbits and personal highlights and updates with all of you. As I wrap up, this is just a brief, like I said, recap of the year. It's not like I've covered everything, but I did want to be very intentional about sharing some of these highlights of the year. It's been incredible growth, along with a lot of growth or quick growth can sometimes bring frustration and some challenges, which we also experienced that having some, a really rapidly growing year. But I welcome it all. So very excited about some of the changes that we're making for next year, some improvements that I will share with you on the next episode. We'll save that for the new year. But for right now, again, I sincerely thank you all for being a part of this community, a part of this podcast family. If I work with you directly one-on-one, or if you use this as a mentoring platform or you just listen and keep up with me, I appreciate you all. So I cannot say that enough. One more thing before we go. Please share this episode with a friend, someone that listens to the podcast, or maybe you'd like to introduce them by starting with something along this episode type to share with a friend. Surely someone who'd be interested in hearing this conversation, hearing me describe my highlights and share about the podcast. I would greatly appreciate you sharing. There are multiple options. If you're in the podcast app, there's easy sharing of this episode through a text or on social media. And if you're on the show notes page, there are social media sharing buttons, which make it super easy to share this episode with your network. Well, all right, everyone. Until next time, have a fantastic rest of your day. Thank you for listening to the Public Health Epidemiology Conversations podcast. Visit phecpodcast.com to find the show notes for each episode and to learn how to work with me.